Take a walk past the Earl Chant field, past Lasbrooks and Fashion Focus, and take a look under the railway bridge. There's the bottom of High Street, lined with shops, making its way uphill and curving towards Edward Street and the Chandwell Baths. Welcome to Chandwell. My name's Michael, and I've been working for hours and hours to mock up a convincing backscene for behind my layout. It was important to get the view under the bridge as realistic as possible. But since I view and film my layout from other angles, I wanted to see if I could do something that worked from more than just one angle. It's not perfect, but I think, after over 50 mock-ups and tests, I am getting there. This road and curved street leaves nothing looking obviously flat. None of the road surface is horizontal, so even though it is strangely thin at the end, it's still part of the layout proper. Because every building is drawn to be a slightly different angle along the curve, the overall view seems to trick the eyes into seeing a cohesive whole. And because the curve is so tight, there's no need for the sky to touch the road at any point. It's all just a trick. 3 bits of paper balanced beside each other. But I think that this proves that my idea might just work, and I am now ready to build it all for real. In this video, I will show you the many steps I took to get to where I am, and give you a glimpse into my mind as I worked it all out. Let's take a look then at preparing the illusion, making a street vanish into the distance. I started with the road surface. I'm using a simple strip of paper to mock this up. The road is 60mm wide with 20mm pavements at each side, and it slides under the bridge just so. The road meets the backscene at an angle, and a bit of folding and cutting gets that sorted. I wanted to make an illusion of the road curving to the left. I used the end of the Poor Law building as a template, chose a horizon line the same as I used for the other forced perspective parts of the layout, and then drew lines to a series of vanishing points. Each one gets closer to the viewer. This gave a realistic enough looking curve. I then used the perspective tool in Inkscape to distort my Poor Law building into the shapes. I then drew simple curves from the road dimensions to the final vanishing point. As a first test, this looks promising from up here. But from down here, there's a clear line between the flat layout and the back wall. Bridge Lane looks like it curves to the right. I did this by sharply curving the card at the same time as ramping it upwards rather severely. Could I do this on High Street? Using the curves I drew earlier, I put this weird looking hook shape on the end of the road, and then just simply glued it along the bottom of the street's buildings. Let's drop it onto the layout. What a difference! So this just curves from horizontal to vertical in the space of a centimetre or so, but the hard line between the baseboard and wall has gone. I drop a flask into place to represent the other side of the street, and the inhibited view really helps the scene. The street is perpendicular to the road, which leaves quite a large gap here. I wondered whether to keep that and make the rearmost buildings more 3D than flat, or whether to stretch this bit of curve so that the street could be flat against the backscene. Let's try a stretched curve. I did this by rotating the road in Inkscape to the correct angle, and then just dragging the lines into the right position. It's a little odd looking, but I'll try it anyway. A line of PVA, another High Street. This looks promising, certainly works from up here. And this looks good too. The centre line is not exactly centred though, is it? Let's try this. Too far. Better. I put the previous version back on the layout and then spent ages trying to compare them both. Eventually, I decided on the stretched version. I spent the next few sessions tweaking the angles on the perspective of the back street. Each one was printed and tested. I tested by eye and I tested by using the camera. The differences were subtle, and I soon realised that I needed a proper street. I spent a couple of evenings drawing High Street. Chandwell is a high street of memories for me. Walking down the hill, you would pass famous names long gone. This Woolworths building is based on the one that used to be in Wakefield. All the other buildings can be found in Bradford. Once drawn, I dropped them into the perspective template that I showed before. I'll cover the drawing of High Street in a future video. This makes a good start, but the flat buildings look like they're falling over. I need to add some depth. I laboriously added the other side of the buildings using 2-point perspective techniques that my dad taught me over 30 years ago. Now this is showing promise. Even from this angle, the illusion looks passable, but I need to work on this road. I'd almost lost count of the amount of mock-ups at this point. I printed the next few with a simple grid. This shows the bend in the road surface quite well, but most importantly, I can photograph the road in situ. Using my iPad, I sketched the adjustments that I wanted to make, before then transcribing it onto the drawing using the grid. The shape is getting weirder, and not all attempts were progress. I carried on like this for an age. I felt that I was making progress, but I needed to work out what to do with the other side of High Street. An empty tea tin simply didn't really work. I originally planned a full-size building here with the backscene behind. It soon became apparent though that this would look awful. Could I stick another set of buildings in here with an appropriate perspective? Maybe, but these ones are too big. More recycling, more empty cereal boxes down. I carried on. Tweak after tweak after tweak. Each time round the loop, I learned more about what works and what doesn't, and about the frustrating way that everything is interrelated. One tweak here breaks something that used to look good there and there. The recycling mounted. I persevered. I drew another grid. And with something almost right, I spent longer drawing the adjustments that I wanted. I remembered seeing just such a street in Edinburgh, so I used a picture of that to help me. Each line I drew by hand was then transcribed into micro adjustments in Inkscape. Each time I made smaller and smaller adjustments. Each time I cut it all out and gave it a try. There finally came a time when the adjustments were really fine, like getting this back part cut just right to fit along the back scene, and then to get the junctions of Market Street and Back Market Street looking right. I was getting close, so I decided to make the base of the road at the back. A scrap bit of paper and a pen and a ruler. And a little while later I had 3 fillets of card to act as a ramp for the road. My grid was now smaller and finer, and I just needed to fine-tune Market Street. And eventually I had a candidate without guides or grids. I slotted it in. Everything fits, and I thought I was done. But these buildings on the left were a pain. The ramp is steep, and I needed to go from full scale to tiny and forced in a very small space. What looked right from the bridge looked awful from above. The buildings looked like they were falling over, or shrinking, or towering far too tall. I eventually came across a shape that worked. The horizon line is lower than it was, but the compromise seems to work from many angles. My last change was a far more severe perspective to try and make the buildings look more curved. And then a tiny little cut just here allows me to overlap the surface of the pavement slightly, and now the pavement appears to go around the side of the last visible building. I had a week off work recently, and just as well, because although this is only 3 pieces of paper, this mock-up scene has taken almost 70 hours of effort. But I'm so pleased with how it's turned out. Thank you to Philip in the Scale Model Scenery Railway Modellers Forum, who inspired me to go that one step further to get this finished. And to my friend Tim, whose endless encouragement kept me going. And thank you so much to my channel members who have given me suggestions and feedback throughout this whole process. If you'd like to join them in supporting Chandwell, you can use the join button to find out more. So I'm ready to lay the road surface. Join me next week to see how that goes. In the meantime, you might like this old video. Until then, thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.